It wasn't.
Yeah, no, I don't think they wanted anything to do with Opie and Anthony.
Yeah.
I think they ended up having to go to Opie and Anthony.
Right. Okay. All right. So now, in terms of your relationship with Dave, was there ever any good times that you got along and had some fun?
I tell you, I have a great example of, like, I think in November before the show started, we hung out, a group of us, in the studios of CBS FM is where we were kind of just turning the mics on.
Right.
And Dave was talking, and it was wild because, like I said, I was a big Van Halen fan.
Sure.
And Dave and we did these at night again. We were doing these trial shows at 7:00 at night. Totally different vibe.
Right.
And Dave came in with a bottle of Jack Daniels.
Oh yeah.
And poured everybody a drink, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm having a Jack Daniels with David Lee Roth.
Right, exactly.
Like, I remember that old music video.
Sure.
Where the concert, and he's swinging from the Jack Daniels bottle. I was like, this is wild.
Oh, yeah. It's incredible. It's like it's like hanging out with Superman or something. It's really wild.
It was.
Yeah. And
I had great conversations with him off the air about his time as an EMT.
Yeah.
He was very passionate about that.
Very much
and
so.
I was interested in genuinely what made him do that.
It's incredible, right? I mean, can you imagine?
And what did he say? What did make him do that?
I don't even remember, but I know he wanted to work in areas of New York where he wasn't going to run into Van Halen fans.
How is that even possible? I mean, it's.
So I guess he means like are Van Halen fans in the inner city of Harlem? Do they know David Lee Roth?
Well,
that's where he would go.
Well, it's so funny because I always had this vision of him working as an EMT, and he had a very strong code of ethics when it came to medical procedures because his father was a doctor. And he had such respect for the profession, and he took it very seriously. Dave does a lot of wild stuff, and when he jumps in 120%. And he goes, like, he wanted to learn how to become a helicopter pilot, and he went right into that, and he dove hard into that. Or if he wants to go in the jungles of whatever, he does that. Like he does, or rock climbing, or he does wild things. He's a very adventurous, wild human being, and he's not the average guy. But it's interesting. So he had this real dedication for the EMT thing, but he is so distinct. His voice, his vibe, his tone, his look, like everything about it is like, and like he says, like, I think he described it once on a talk show where, like, everything he does, it's like, oh, there's Dave doing whatever. Like, it's because it's like Popeye or something. Like, everybody already knows who he is. It's like he's very well defined, and he's been defined for decades in pop culture. So I always imagine like somebody having heart palpitations on the ground, and all of a sudden I hear like, "You're gonna be fine, dude. Don't worry." And it's like, oh my God, David Lee Roth, what the fuck are you doing here? Somebody get me an EMT. So it's like, it's just funny. Like I can't imagine him doing something like that. He is the ultimate rock star. You picture him needing EMTs, not being an EMT. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, so Dave, are you saying that somebody might ask somebody get me a doctor?
Yeah, exactly. Somebody get me a doctor, and somebody give me a shot.
And Dave had said, like, according to him, he was only recognized twice the entire time he was in
only He tied his hair back, and he sort of kept a lower profile. But here's the thing. I wish that he would have gone into a little deeper of himself in some of the radio broadcasts. I think he sometimes, like, hides a lot of that stuff. And I think if he really kind of, reached down and got some of that stuff out, it's really the way Howard connected with a lot of people, is he talked about things that were, like, real, like, deep in him, even his insecurities or his fears or whatever. And he used humor in many different ways. But people connect with that kind of stuff. And I have a feeling that, I guess, Dave is always such a performer that I don't know if he was comfortable being so vulnerable.
Yeah, because you got to think, like, Howard was the guy who made it okay to have a small penis, to be bad at sex. David Lee Roth can't do that. He's David Lee Roth is the cool guy.
Oh, yeah.
Howard Stern, now, we know Howard Stern's got a supermodel wife, and he makes $500 million a year.
Right.
So he is the cool guy, even though he's been playing the non-cool guy for so long that we still buy it. You could not buy David Lee Roth saying, I have a small penis. And it's the opposite. So probably what needed to happen is he probably needed a good radio guy co-host to make him more human.
Right. That's for sure. He needed his Robin. Or whether it was a woman or a man or whoever, like Robin always brought Howard down to earth. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like she always said, "Oh, Howard, wait a minute, you're going too far," or she reins him in, and Fred would do his wild stuff on top of it, and Gary would organize the circus. Like everybody had their role. Jackie was writing, when Artie was there, he was peppering in the spice on top of it. Like there, there's a certain gumbo that makes a show like that work. You know what I mean? And that's what's kind of cool. So. And everyone has their own different things. So now, do you remember
was that ever an idea that was brought early on?
Yeah. He didn't want to. He didn't want any part of that.
Really?
Exactly. Yeah. Dave. Dave's like John Wayne. He's like he rolls alone. You know what I mean? Like he's already.
It'd be like if it's in Van Halen, they were like, we're gonna bring a co-host singer.
I don't think so.
A front man. Not happening.
he
well, that's true because he will never get on stage with Sammy Hagar do a song.
That's right. He wouldn't. He could barely tour with Sammy Hagar, and they weren't even on stage together.
He always used to say, and I'm sure he's said this in interviews, but he always used to say, "Remember, I don't sing his songs; he sings my songs."
Right? Yeah. Well, his famous line is, "Sam throws a great party." And I am the party. You know what I mean? Like look, and he's got a point. I understand his whole thing, and that's cool. So now, when did things sort of come to a head? Did it get to the point where you guys had a blowout, or like how did it close with Dave?
No, it just got to the point where I had to deliver bad news to him about ratings, and he probably felt like it wasn't as fun as he thought it should have been, and
right.
I don't know. It never got going really from the get-go.
That's incredible. And what was the reaction from the advertisers?
Well, that was another thing early on where Vermont. I know in particular Vermont Teddy Bear. So Vermont Teddy Bear is a big radio sponsor. They were a big Howard Stern sponsor.
Huge.
Huge. Yeah. And they not only own Vermont Teddy Bear, but they own all these other like a flower company.
Yeah, the chocolate things.
They
had
a bunch of things. So. Yep. They're a big advertiser.
Oh, yeah.
And the live reads were a very popular thing. And he was like, I'm David Lee Roth. I'm not going to read about a teddy bear. Instead of having fun with it and talking, sexy, like, hey, how he does his deep voice. Yeah. He wanted no part of that.
Yeah. Well, it's part of his image, right? Like he's got to be the tough guy. And,
was that a major problem with the advertisers? I mean, was that like contract?
I do recall that being a problem. Yeah, it was. I do recall it being a problem. Yeah.
And in terms of what was your impression of the music he played? He played some wild stuff.
Yeah, that was another thing. So he'd come in the morning at like 4:30, 5 o'clock, and spend all morning picking out the perfect music. Again, not topic related, not what you're going to talk about.
Right.
Another thing where it was just like a distraction.
Right.
So yeah, he'd be picking out. He played I think this was on the air every day.
Yeah.
He would play at the end of every show, Next to You by the Police.
But do you think it was also a problem that he wasn't like a true New Yorker?
I don't think so.
No?
Because he kind of felt like a New Yorker to me. Like, I think his spending time as an EMT.
Yeah.
That was another wild day. I don't recall why we went to his apartment in New York City.
Oh, wow.
It was wild. It was the most, I would say it was a below average apartment.
Wow. Really?
Below average.
Like it looked like a college, like a young single man's apartment?
It looked like where not like I'm sure nobody in there was making $50,000 a year.
Wow! So wow, that's incredible.
And he had two apartments next to each other.
Two were they connected?
Two small ones. They were not connected, but they looked the same. I just remember like being like I'm really going to observe this when I go in here, And he had CDs stacked on the stove.
Okay.
He had a television on the floor, no stand. He had a mattress in the bedroom, no box spring or stand.
Oh, man.
And he randomly had that white fedora from, like, California Girls video.
Wow. I mean, but was it like
sitting on his shelf?
Sounded like a college kid.
And what was in the other apartments?
Stuff like some of the old palm trees. It was more, you know what? That second one was almost used like a storage spot.
Oh, okay. Wow.
But when I did comment on his mattress, and he said, "Oh, most nights I sleep up on the roof." That's what he said.
Oh my God, he's like Batman. It's like Batman. He sleeps on the roof. Oh my God.
Yeah. He goes, most nights I sleep right up on the roof.
Wow, right? That is wild. But wait a second, didn't you work with him in the winter?
Yeah.
He's sleeping on the roof in the winter?
I did. It had to be between November and March that we had this conversation.
Oh my God! So now was it?
I'm thinking that's a line, Dave. I'm thinking.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's a line. So now was it clean or was it like messy?
It was clean, but things weren't like a stack of CDs. They were stacked neatly, but they were on the stove.
Yeah, probably because he wasn't cooking.
No.
He's like, I eat a couple of CDs for breakfast and then I eat a couple for lunch. Yeah, he's such a character. I mean, isn't it sort of incredible how much he is David Lee Roth even off the air?
Yes.
I mean, it's unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he sort of lives like guy, he's like a cartoon, that guy. He's unbelievable. So now, obviously, I'm assuming you met some of the David Lee Roth anger, right? Like, cuz he gets pretty hot.
Yeah. He does get pretty hot.
Yeah, yes. He gets pretty hot. So now, obviously, you're not making these decisions. You're bringing information in, but were you the recipient of a lot of heat because of his reaction to the decisions?
Well, he would react with heat to me, but gearing it like, you tell them, and then he would be angry.
Okay, gotcha.
So he wasn't being directly yelling at me.
Right.
He was yelling at me, but prior to yelling at me, he would say, you tell Chiasano this. And then he'd go on a tear.
Unbelievable. And Tom was not well at the time, right?
I don't recall that being a thing. Like, I don't know if he wasn't. I don't think maybe. Yeah, I don't know if we were aware of it or not.
Yeah, I know he had a hard battle with cancer.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So what would you say you took away from the experience? What did you learn from the whole experience?
Well, what I learned from the whole experience is that radio is a very particular skill set, and you really can't pluck people who have fame and fortune and from other walks of life and have them alone do a radio show.
Right.
I think one of the great things that Boomer did when Boomer and Carton became a thing is he understood Craig's experience on the radio.
Right.
And what works on radio and how you drive a radio show.
Sure.
And I think that was one of the biggest reasons that show was successful is that these guys that are alpha males from another industry, when they come in, it's very hard for them to give up any control.
Right.
And Dave wasn't going to do that. And I think going forward in trying to find shows that work on the radio, I'd rather have a no-name person that is good at radio than a big name person who's good at something else. Like, we even see it now when podcasting is a thing now, where a lot of celebrities have podcasts, but they're generally sitting there with somebody who is not as famous as them with that skill of being a host.
Right. Of course. Now, and now looking back, now that you've had this experience with Dave and a Van Halen song comes on the radio when you're driving around, what goes through your head?
At the time it was a stressful situation.
Right.
But I look back, like anything, you look back on the fun memories. Like, they did not ruin Van Halen songs for me.
Okay.
By any means. It never did.
Right.
It never did, because I kind of felt like I knew what I was getting into. One really fun thing he did one time, and I think about it every time I hear Jump.
Right.
Is Dave was going through his music in the studio at probably 4:30 in the morning.
Right.
And there was a jock on the air at the time, playing the K-Rock music, and you had to follow a playlist. And the guy hits the intro to Jump.
Right.
And Roth is in the room with him.
Wow.
And it's 4:30 in the morning in New York City.
Right.
And Roth turns the mic on and sings the song live. and then goes back to picking out his music.
Exactly. That's like Hugh Superman turning on the heat vision for a minute there. Exactly.
And I was like, wow, who even heard this? It's 4